Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review for Shelby Oaks. A woman's desperate search for her long lost sister falls into obsession upon realizing that the imaginary demon from their childhood may have been real. Chris Stuckmann, a YouTube legend. Whether you like him, love him, or hate him, you cannot deny this dude has literally kind of paved the way for film criticism on YouTube. He's one of the original voices, one of the biggest voices out there. And this film in particular has been a long time coming. I can safely say I was a backer of this. I paid my 75 bucks to get my Blu-ray, my poster and everything, and I was really excited to do so because, admittedly, we're in a little bit more of I guess an awkward and unique position here, Luke, because we actually know Chris pretty well. We're from the area. We've hung out a couple of times at the theater, seen some screenings together, and there's a little more to that I won't get into in this video, but I have some more coming soon. So it'll be more Shelby Oaks stuff. But it made this kind of one of those things where, yeah, it's exciting. It's awesome for us. I mean, being aspiring filmmakers in Northeast Ohio and seeing somebody who you've kind of grown up watching on YouTube make it to this point where their film is being distributed and picked up by Neon, like that's really huge for us. Like as people who just like, live in this town, seeing all this stuff in this film that we recognize, it's pretty wild.
Getting into YouTube, it's something you strive for. We also want to become filmmakers eventually at some point down the line. We just have a love for film, and we decided to get in the game here. And Chris Stuckmann is really a blueprint for that. He's been around for such a long time doing those reviews. That's something that Dylan and I, when we had first met, it was an early discussion for us. Was Chris Stuckmann. So it's funny that now we actually get to see this film come out because it has been a long time coming. Like Dylan said, we're from the area. We're one of the few people that I think really got to see Auditorium 6 years ago.
Yeah.
His short film, which played in Cleveland, and we both were working. And I remember getting off that day and legitimately just driving straight up to Cleveland to be able to go check that one out. And that one was a lot of fun. So I know we did a review on that by admission only, or old podcast way back in the day, and getting the know that he was coming out with an actual feature length film. This one has been highly anticipated for us. We're not gonna lie. The Stucks is out here making films, so this was really exciting to actually go into here, be able to see this one a little bit early because, yeah, like Dylan said, we had a bit of a dog in this fight.
Yeah. So I actually got to go to the backer screening for this one. Again, I'll save details on why and everything for a later video, but it was cool. It was fun. It was certainly one of those once in a lifetime experiences, and I quite enjoyed my experience with that. And then Luke, you got to see this thing via Fantastic Fest, which is where we're saving the review for as a part of our coverage here. And I gotta say, coming into this movie with all those ties and everything, it's important that I think we set forth that, we're not going to BS you guys. We're not going to sit here and say if, just because Chris is somebody we aspire to be or aspire to look up to or anything like that, that this is going to affect our ratings and our thoughts and our feelings. So going into that, I got to say, this is a very solid debut. This is not something that is like mind blowing. This is not a Talk to Me. This is not a Hereditary, but it's very solid. And you can tell that this was a movie that at one point I think was supposed to be much smaller. But the fact that, they had such a rabid and great fan base behind it, it really, I think, is one of the best examples of showing what crowdfunding and then eventually, even just topping it off a little bit with some production from a bigger studio can really do and how that might be the future of YouTube filmmaking.
Absolutely. This one was such an enigma, I think, of a film. Like we said, long time coming, was really crowdfunded. And then, a bigger studio did come in, Mike Flanagan attached to it as a producer, it just a really unique showing in terms of film's release and what can be done when there's a fan base, a rabid fan base behind it. And going into it, like you said, Dylan, I don't think this is breaking any molds, anything like that. I don't think it was necessarily meant to. This is, it's got that found footage aspect to it, but also a strong cinematic narrative to it as well. So you get this intriguing transition with the film. First, about what 20 minutes ish. It's about really heavily found footage, and it does come off as fairly fast paced. As we said on the channel, our love for found footage has grown since seeing a handful of really peak found footage films. And Shelby Oaks opens up that way. I think I was really engaged from the very start of this, really taking in the concept, the situation of what's going on. And then for me, there was a seamless transition from that found footage aspect to a more cinematic narrative. I love the transition there and how we kind of carry that story over, because I think that can be such a big issue with just the narrative in general. And I think maybe a little bit later on in the film, I start feeling it, just being able to juxtapose that position, that pacing from the very beginning, where it seemed rather fast paced. And then as we get deeper into the story, it seems to slow down a little bit. And the kind of tone that we're going for, where we're just really, this is heavily plot driven. I was hoping a little bit more from the character perspective of peeling back some layers. But I think overall, it has a really strong start in terms of that pace.
Yeah, I would say the biggest, getting into my criticisms first, I guess, I would say the biggest issue I had with this movie, really my two big issues, were that this movie is really short. And, it's one of those things where we love an hour and a half movie. This is an hour and 39, it says here on IMDb, but it just feels like, that first act, that opening, very strong, gets you in there. We understand that we're moving pretty quick. We're getting through a lot of information, but it's interesting. It's intriguing. It's pulling you in to the narrative, to the story. It's all really solid. And I agree that transition, really creative, really fun. I like how they handled all that. But it does turn into one of those things where once we actually start getting into the more story driven aspect of this, the more, I guess you'd say, linear film version of this, you can see that pace never really slows down, and it kind of leaves some characters by the wayside. I think really the true brightest light in this one is Camille Sullivan. She's fantastic, not only as an actress in this film, just by her performance and being really believable and making you really feel for her. She's got a lot of really great quiet moments where it's just her watching tapes or watching something or explaining something. And it's like those quiet moments with her are the best moments because you can get so much from her without her even having to express any dialogue. And that's so key to building tension and building horror. It's like we're connecting dots with her as the film is moving.
Absolutely. Camille Sullivan, I think, is the shining star of the film just because she has so many different scenes. She does play Mia, the sister of Riley, and she's on this hunt. She's looking to hunt down and figure out exactly what happened in the situation, as we're getting only tidbits. And the way this kind of all starts to fall out in terms of when we start getting more information, she decides to go on this journey of what happened to Riley. I love that aspect of it. Her reasoning to it, sometimes, they can kinda come off as, "Ugh, you're really trying here," but I thought that her reasoning to everything was really authentic, especially when you're dealing with sisters. I like that aspect of it, and she's sitting there watching these tapes. There's a really great moment, in terms of terror, I think, where we're in it and we're understanding everything, and there's this beat of we're soaking in exactly what had happened. And, of course, we play into some tropes here where there's a reflection in a television set, and I was like, "Okay, that worked." I watched this
Mhm.
twice, and it worked both times for me. So, yeah, it's nothing completely original, but the way that it's presented, the way that it's shot, and the way that it's acted, I think those moments in here work rather well, and I think you'll probably hear maybe some people echo that this isn't anything out of the ordinary in terms of, the storytelling or the narrative of what we do get, but I think Chris Stuckmann was able to kind of piece this thing together with a lot of great tension and eeriness, that even though it's nothing that we haven't seen before, when he does want to increase those scares and leave those moments of terror to us, they are prevalent there. And I think I had that moment twice when I had left Shelby Oaks, and just the atmosphere alone, it really does work well, and it plays off with those characters.
Yeah, and I can say like just my going back to kind of my issue with it is even though Camille Sullivan is incredible in this and I thought she did great, she's the most developed character, which granted main character sure, but like when I say the most developed, I mean like everybody else is kind of left as almost just there to facilitate the story and keep us moving. I feel like we didn't get as much into just what, was going on with her relationship. They hint towards it. It kind of seems like they want to tell a little bit more there, but you don't really get anything. It kind of leaves for some awkward, just kind of left out in the air moments that are kind of just explained away towards the end. But it is one of those things for me where it's like I just kind of felt like we could have spent a little more time in the mystery. We could have found more interesting ways to really kind of get us through, maybe give us a little bit more investigation that was as impactful as just the setting of it was, like the setup. And that's one of the things that I found really hard, was because it's like, yeah, I was really into it, and I was engaged throughout the film. It's not like I'm not, and I do think that it's very competent, very well done, but it is one of those things where it's like, from a first time filmmaking standpoint, now it's one of those things where it's like you can see kind of where they were playing it more safe. They were trying to be a little bit more lenient and a little bit more light on their feet with what they were going for and how they're telling it, because you can tell that I think they were expecting to make this a lot cheaper than it was. So instead of, when they get a bigger budget, having the luxury to say, okay, well, maybe we can open out up some of this, you can tell that it's like, yes, this is still very much a first time, no holds bar, we're moving kind of picture. And it's like, it has a charm, I think, with that. I think there is some of that, especially being, a hometown hero kind of story for us with Chris. It's one of those things where this movie in and of itself, though, it carries some of that spirit. It carries that independent spirit really well. We talk about that with movies like just recently Dolly, which I thought did a really good job of carrying that independent spirit with it. I think that this is certainly doing that, but it does leave you wanting a little more in some places.
Yeah, because at its heart, it is still a small film. It was completed, and we had that when we talk about smaller films, and it's like, okay, they make use of their locations where we're not going a billion different places. We're not opening up the world just because we don't have that luxury. I think Shelby Oaks, at its heart, is still that, where we did have a bigger studio come in after the fact, but you can only do so much after you have a finished film, and you do start feeling that, especially when we're going through the narrative, that cinematic narrative, where it's not as fast paced for me. When we look at the found footage aspects, I think that that nice sprinkle, that garnish of found footage throughout the film really does speed up some of the pacing for me. But, it does leave you wanting more in terms of situation, just because I think we want to see Mia as a character interact with more characters, and then maybe start understanding her psychology a little more. We get some of her backstory in terms of her childhood, but I wanted to see it more, maybe some more interactions or maybe some more stops along the way, just because when you do look at the film and this small town feel to it, I think Chris Stuckmann is able to encapsulate that rather well as we're going through, especially a lot of the night shots. I feel like it has
Oh yeah.
a lot of great atmosphere, but I wanted to see a little bit more meat on the bone with that narrative of us getting maybe some deeper rooted characters. And I don't think we need a whole cast of characters that we have to unravel, but in terms of maybe another relationship that Mia would have, because we do have the husband, but it's kind of more of a light relationship. He's in and out in certain scenes, but we don't get anything really deep rooted. It is really more so the focal point of Mia and Riley, and we start understanding the plot and what kind of film this is. I don't think we need more scenes of that, just because it is pretty lean and mean in terms of the narrative that we get for the supernatural story itself. But I think more characters, more character layers to just really latch on to something. So then when we do get to that third act, we feel a little bit more involved.
Yeah, and like one of the things that I want to compliment that I think was pretty integral, and I think for most like first time horror filmmakers, at least I think in our point, story and everything is key, but you also want to show people that you can scare them, at least have some jolts and scares. And I think Chris Stuckman really nailed that. Like you referenced a scene earlier in the film, and it's one of those scenes where it's like, yes, in the backer screening, it was one of those things where, yeah, that got an audible gasp from everybody. Like there's some really smart, intuitive, very subtle scares. And I think that that's one of the hardest things to pull off, especially when it comes to, again, being, the first time you're doing this and you're trying to really make it count, make every single interaction count. That could be a lot to balance. And sometimes those scares fall to the wayside and they're made up with blood and guts and gore. And not to say there isn't blood, guts, and gore in this, there certainly is, but it's one of those things where it's like, they actually really did a great job of just making those scares count and actually pacing them out really well. I thought there was a lot of tension, especially like you said in some of those night shots.
Sometimes you get bombarded with scare after scare after scare, and you feel like a film is just trying too hard. I don't think Shelby Oaks is that in any sense. It really does, like you said, pace them out. So then when Chris Stuckmann and company want to present those scares to you, it really does catch you off guard. So there are a couple times in here. He got me another one a little bit later on in the. We go through a prison, and I was like, "Oh man," very rarely, as we see so many different films, horror films, do you get jump scares, and it did get me a couple times in this. So I was pretty pleasantly surprised with Shelby Oaks in terms of being able to create those scares at certain times and that eeriness to it. We're out in the woods quite a bit in the film, and
Mhm.
I think it works rather well. I think it's shot rather nice, and just being able to have that eeriness on screen, it has that small town feel to it. You really do feel like you're in that situation when you're Mia's looking around and kind of scanning the woods, and you always feel like you're missing something. Like you always want to go back. The way they present the found footage aspect of it is certainly that way as well, where they kind of set up the bowling pins to be like, "Oh, wait, you did miss something," and then that kind of keeps you on edge a little bit throughout the rest of the film, as you're always looking in every aspect of the screen just to see if maybe something is lurking. And I like that where you have that heightened experience. Now, like Dylan said, he went to a backer screening. I saw this as a screener, so I was in the comfort of my own home seeing it. So I think we had two pretty decently different experiences. And
Mhm.
I can say, sitting alone watching this film, you certainly feel that eeriness where you're just alone in the room and you're sitting there in the screen is black and you're just in these woods and you're really feeling it, especially some of the aspects of her just in that third act as well as we start learning some more things. I think it has that great atmosphere to it and that eeriness, and Shelby Oaks is able to sustain that even through the found footage into that more cinematic narrative.
Yeah, and I would say like the other piece to this that really impressed me, and I was curious if you had gotten any of this from the screener, because like when we went to the backer screening, I know I walked out. One of the big things that blew my mind was just the sound design in this is so sharp. Like the sound is so well done. Like you hear so many little cues and little things throughout. The score is also really well done. But it's one of those things for me where it's like the sound in this, you can tell that like the kind of movies that Chris watches and the kind of stuff that, we all watch as horror fans and stuff we love. Like, there's elements of Lake Mungo, there's elements of Signs in this, but it's like really when it comes to the sound, you can tell that that was a key aspect from the very beginning. There's moments in this where they intentionally, manipulate some of the sound, and it was one of those things where I didn't necessarily like realize that as much until after the screening and getting to speak with other people that they notice things as well. It's like it's really creative. You can tell that somebody took a lot of time with a lot of love to really build in this atmosphere. And I think it went a long way for making this, kind of, that's why I say the story wise, from the writing and everything, you can tell this is a tiny movie that knows it's not going to be made for a lot of money. But when you look at all of the dressing and everything on the sides and everything around it, it looks and sounds and feels really big. Like it's kind of an unruly marriage. It doesn't work all the time, but I think that like for the most part, the moments that do stick out, they stick out really well.
And I think Shelby Oaks is going to have this interesting dynamics as more people start to see it because it does have that. It is a small film at heart, but it does not look like a small film in terms of the way that Chris Stuckman is able to present a lot of the scenes. A lot of great camera work in here as well. And Dylan and I did have a discussion prior to me viewing the screener, and you had mentioned how great the sound design was. And after you mentioned that, I was even more excited because I mentioned we saw Auditorium 6, and us walking out of that short film, we had talked about being so surprised about the sound
Yeah.
design in that and how competent that was, and it was really a shining light of that short film. So in this one, I will be honest, I watched the first one first time just like checking out the actual narrative itself. Second time, I wanted to pay a little bit more attention to sound design. I think it comes across decently. I still love to go to the theater to check this one out to be able to actually hear the sound design in all of its glory, but I think it does shine through if you're going to check this one out on VOD. I just don't think it's as crisp as I'd like it to be. But I think overall, this was a fun film. It has that eeriness. It has a lot of great atmosphere. Mia as a character, Camille Sullivan, I think it was a perfect focal point for this and the mystery surrounding it is rather decent itself. We're not breaking any molds, anything like that. It is just more of a typical ghost story, I would say. And we get into a lot of supernatural elements and other things that I'm not going to spoil here. But I think, people can find a lot of fun with it. There's a couple things like pacing wise, I felt it slowed down a little bit, just juxtaposing it with the found footage aspect of it. But there are a lot of nice shots and it does keep you intrigued. I'm going to go worth a watch on this one. I think a lot of people can have fun with this as it's coming out later in the month of October, I believe on the 24th. This is a film that it would be great to go to the theater, see it at a late night showing. You walk out of the theater as it's getting colder out and you're walking to your car and you're breathing in that cold night air, and it will leave an eeriness to you as you get into your car. I think you can have a lot of fun with this one at the theater. I am definitely going to go check it out because I want to hear that sound design in all its glory as well. But I think this one, really strong showing for Chris Stuckmann being is a debut film.
I'd agree, yeah, and I'm actually gonna go with a recommend on this one, just because again, I have a lot more. I guess you'd say we both have dogs in this race, but there's a reason why it's like I have two minds of this movie, and it's like it's hard, but it's one of those things where if I'm gonna be completely honest, I still think like as far as a debut goes, it's still very strong. Again, rough around the edges in a few spots, but I think that more or less what you're getting out of this is something that I still feel at the end of the day is pure independent horror filmmaking, and I think that it's just great to be here. I hope that this turns into an event for people and that they can go out and enjoy it. This is one I'm really excited as well to go back and see, and I'm really excited to dive into more and talk more about it, because it's like, yeah, this is one that as more people get to see it and we can kind of say more about the story, there will be a lot of theories and a lot of things online. And I think that's one of the best parts going forward for this. I hope that you had said something to me via text that I completely agree with. I hope for the next one, Chris kind of, lets the bars of the it has to be a small movie go a little bit more. I hope that he can kind of get a little bit more wild with it, a little bit more freaky with some of the stuff, because you can see the shades there. He's good at building scares, but like let's just really let the pen run, really let you dive into some more characters, just give us everything and hope that we can make it happen.
Absolutely. That handle on the great atmosphere, which is such a hard thing to grasp in horror stories. Sometimes you can get a lot of great scares or great characters, but the eeriness, the atmosphere to the story just falls a little bit flat and doesn't keep you as engaged. But they were able to harness it here with Shelby Oaks. And yeah, I'm excited to see what Chris Stuckmann does next. I think he can, let the leash off a little bit, get a little wacky with it. We love our wacky horror. I think he has certainly seen enough films to be able to push something like that out. So I'm certainly excited. He's got a lot of great atmosphere to this one, and that's really one of the biggest parts. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do next and what kind of narrative he's going to present.
Absolutely. But alrighty, guys, let us know down below if you're going to be checking out Shelby Oaks. Again, if you're from the Ohio area, I think you're going to really enjoy this. So definitely let us know if you're planning on going to see it, maybe where you're planning to go see it. Yeah, this is going to be a big one for the Cleveland area. We've had Superman this year. We got to watch him fight in Progressive Field and some stuff there, and now we get to watch this. And this one I think is a little more special because you actually get to go to a lot of places that we've actually been to and see. It's like Cleveland's Cleveland. They'll dress it up as any other big city, but hey, there's a lot of recognizable spots here where it's like, hey, I've been by that
It's very
cornfield.
funny.
I've been there. Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, other than that, guys, let us know down below what you thought. And then yeah, if anything else pops up in your brain as far as independent films to look out for, horror things you want us to cover as the month of October is on the way, feel free to let us know. So alrighty. Until next time, guys, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.